Okay, now that we've seen what the football average practice schedule is, I'm going to tell you a little bit about what the cheerleaders' practice schedule is approximately. The average cheerleader practices 10 hours a week for 5 days a week, 11 months out of every year. That's approximately 750 hours spent doing the same material and going over the same stunts, cheers, and everything else that they already know. And basically just constantly going over things that some people would deem impossible. If on an average, most cheerleaders have fourth block in PE, which is physical education. At my school, it started approximately at 12:45 and school got out at 2:15. So on an average, you had an hour and 15 minutes of exercise during school, and then you would go into practice for about 2.5 hours because practice always ended at 5 o'clock. So to break down what you would do in between those approximately 4 hours of practice, to start, when you get into class, you have 15 minutes to get dressed. Then you'll move on to stretching. Stretching was usually around 10 to 15 minutes, depending on how much stretching you need to do on that particular day. Then you would move on to running or stadiums. Sometimes you do running and stadiums. That usually takes around 15-18 minutes too. After that, you come in and do more exercises. And that would usually, the exercises you do inside will usually be about 30 minutes of crunches, sit-ups, push-ups, bench presses, dips, and anything to build muscle. Basically, we're just weight training for 30 minutes. After you've weight trained for 30 minutes, you move on and do practice jumps, flexibility. We'd start working on stunts. That usually takes up the rest of the 45 minutes that you're in there because you're working on the physical skills. After that, you get out of school, but then you move straight into practice. You barely even get a break. You might get a chance to go get water or go to the bathroom. Once you're in the practice, that starts at approximately 2:30. You're then working on cheers, working on jumps again, doing stunting, and practicing your dances if you have a performance that week. Otherwise, the time is just split between jumps, stunts, and the cheers. So, for a stunt, the average stunt needs two bases, one here, right and left side. You'll need a back spot in the middle, a flyer to go on top. Those two bases who are on the right and the left side are holding up, on an average, a girl who weighs anywhere from 140 to 170 pounds. If you're in college, the weight limit could expand to a bigger person. But on average, that's what it was at my school. However, that's just for a normal stunt when you're just going to hold them in the air. If you're doing a pyramid, you'll need the two bases, the back spot, and the one flyer. But you'll also need two more bases of back spot and another flyer. That's two 140-pound girls that two different groups of people are holding up. But on top of these two flyers is another flyer who's being held up by just them with no back spot. So that's the two bases over here, the two bases over here, and then the two girls up top, and the one flyer. With her base, her other base, and her back spot at the bottom behind the group. So these two bases are basically holding up two 140-pound girls per group, because the back spots and the bases for the other girl they don't even have physical contact with the stunt. So let's see. If your daughter was holding up a girl who weighs anywhere from 140 to 170 pounds, would you really want her to be told that what she does isn't a stunt? Well, isn't a sport? Stunning takes a lot of physical and mental strength. The people who are in cheerleading need physical strength, mental strength, stamina, endurance, and mainly a good personality and lots of energy to be able to do what they do. The average performance that a cheerleader does is less than 3 minutes and 15 seconds. I know, for what they do, it does not seem like it goes that quick. But everything that they do in there has to be underneath that amount of time. So there is a lot of practice and physical testing and ability and skills that goes into getting that routine down in less than that amount of time. So the next time you think that what someone says about cheerleading not being a sport is true, think about if you want your daughter or your sister, your friend, to be told that what they do isn't a stunt when you've seen them come home from practice just as tired as your football friend or your basketball friend, if not more tired. And think about how many injuries and possible how many and think about how many injuries and possible injuries that they could have came home with compared to what the football players come home with. They are very similar. Cheerleaders are literally putting their lives in the hands of their teammates every time they decide to do a stunt. Football players, their life is still in their own hands. Basketball players, their lives are in their own hands. But cheerleaders put their life in the hands of their teammates. So the next time that someone tells you that cheerleading isn't a sport, use your own judgment. Don't let someone else's opinion affect what your opinion is of something that you believe in. It takes one rock to break a window, and it can be shattered. But it takes one person to have an opinion and think about it strong enough to where they could eventually, if they tried hard enough, change the opinion of millions of others. So hopefully I have explained to you why cheerleading is a sport, and hopefully this helps clear up some of the confusion on what cheerleading is and the definition of it and what the definition of a sport is. And hopefully you will decide to think that cheerleading is a sport also. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. Bye, class.